you can't stop the 1-year-old from hitting, but you can teach the 3-year-old to sort of be the hero. You don't want the older kids to be leaders of the younger siblings. You want them to be the hero. So he was becoming her hero. Plus, the bonus, she's getting the attention she wanted. He's walking her over to the board, talking to her, becoming the hero. Hi, welcome to the BratBusters Parenting Podcast, episode 4. This one is on sibling rivalry. My daughter's here with me, but I just said to her, I don't like talking about sibling rivalry, so we'll find out why as we go along. Anyway, welcome, Amy.
Thanks for having me. I don't know why I say thanks for having me.
We work together, so.
But yeah, I actually didn't know that you didn't like talking about sibling rivalry. Why don't you?
Because it's an awkward one. It's one of those ones that sort of fixes itself once you're a leader. It's not one of those ones that you start with. It's like attitude. So when siblings are fighting, it's the second to last thing to disappear organically once you're a leader. And attitude is the very last thing to rectify itself all by itself once you're a leader. Do you get the idea here? It's hard to fix when you're not a leader. Once you're a leader, it's easy to fix. So working on your leadership skills, that's not the first place I would go, is sibling rivalry and fighting.
I see. So it's almost like it's a side effect.
Sort of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good way of putting it.
Okay. Well, we do have some questions, which I think we'll go into, and then that way it'll kind of go in and talk a little bit more about sibling rivalry.
Sure. Actually, it's interesting because I didn't know why I didn't like talking about it until I just said that. Because sibling rivalry is the same as kids who fight. And I always know kids who fight, why I don't like that. But I never really put the two together. But it is the same thing, sibling rivalry.
Yeah.
It's when they fight. So stupid me. I never connected the two. Duh, rivalry, fighting. Okay, anyway.
So we're going to go into our first question. It's Christina from the United States. We welcomed a new baby last month, and our 2-year-old is happy and loving around her, but is curious on how to interact and has swatted her a few times. What are your tips and recommendations on supporting my 2-year-old to safely and gently interact with his baby sister, no slaps? Of course, with the priority of keeping the baby safe. All I can find out there is a therapy session approach, which clearly won't work on my kid.
Christy, I was just laughing because you said very loving, and then when he does swatter. Anyway, they don't know what they're doing. They're only 2 years old. You can't train them compassion, empathy, soft spot on a newborn. You just have to supervise like crazy and correct. Every single time they swat or go for it, don't allow them to hit the baby, but you have to supervise them 24/7. Every time they go to get aggressive or do anything like that, you say no and you move them away. And then this is only a 2-year-old, so then you might say, do you want to read a book? So you give them an alternative thing to do. It's sort of redirection, but it's not rewarding them for that. Like it's not moving them away and then giving them some cake or something. Then they'll learn, hey, wait, if I go to SWAT, then I'll get some cake. It's more just sort of redirection that isn't too much fun. So it's just reading a book, or do you want to go get me a toy and we can play with that on the side while you're holding the baby? But you cannot expect a 2-year-old, because you said those many therapy sessions, which I'm always criticizing, you said they're not working. The reason is that they're not about words when they're 2. They're about actions. So just an instant push away, just gently, and say no, and never sound angry. If you sound angry, it actually kind of makes it worse. So just go no, and you push them away, and that's it. And then you say, go get me a book or go get me a toy. So you're redirecting. But that's very normal. The most loving little toddler can still sometimes lash out at a baby. It's extremely normal. So I wouldn't worry about your child being demonic. It's just completely normal. They don't understand. Okay.
And it's also a big transition for the little kid, too.
It's a huge transition. How can you possibly explain to a 2-year-old how their life is going to change with a new baby coming in? You didn't know when you had your first child. This is their first sibling. How on earth can they know what's coming? In the hospital, they're usually really sweet and loving, and you're going, oh my God, he's such a wonderful big brother, or she's such a wonderful big sister. And then, because they're all lovey-dovey and that, and then you get them home, and after a week, they throw them on the floor. They pull them out of the bassinet and throw them on the floor. They're like, what the heck? It's because they're like, wait a minute, this thing is staying permanently. It's loud, it stinks, and it's taking my mommy and daddy away from me. So it's only natural that they'll lash out on a newborn. They won't all do it, but a lot of them will.
Is there anything you can do to prepare them ahead of time, or?
Nothing. Well, nothing I've ever come up with. You know, there's all those things people talk about, get them their own baby, get them their own change table, all this, but they'll still usually turn around and hit the baby anyway, because that's the one you're holding. It's not the baby they want, that they have that they want. It's the one you're holding. So I've never heard of it working, to be honest. It's such a weak, if it does, it's just lucky, and it's just a weak way of going about it. You've got to interrupt that behavior by using consistent corrective actions. just a no and a push them away to let them know that, not so much to let them know that they shouldn't be doing that, but to let them know that you're not going to put up with it. There's a difference. They already know what they should and shouldn't do, but it's the fact that you're not going to put up with it. That's what makes the difference. Everyone thinks that if they understand they shouldn't do something, that they're not going to do it. That makes no sense at all. They don't. It's not a lack of understanding. It's a lack of correction. So yeah, if they think you're not going to put up with it, that's what stops them in their tracks. Eventually, they're not going to learn the first time, maybe the 50th time.
It's just about keeping the baby safe.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, next question is June from Germany. How to handle fighting between siblings who are 1 and 3 years old?
It's a tough one. 3 years old, a little bit easier because it's not a 1 and a 2-year-old. A 3-year-old, usually the 1-year-old will often lash out. I can go in a million different directions with this one. The 1-year-old will often lash out at the 3-year-old to get their attention. Okay? So then the 3-year-old will retaliate. So what you do is, and you can't really blame the 3-year-old if the 1-year-old's just hit them. So what you do is you put on the behavior board for the 3-year-old, because it only starts at the age of 3. And the behavior board is free. I don't know where it's probably attached to a link on here.
So it would be on BratBusters.com.
BratBusters.com. Anyway, so you put on the behavior board, the rule for the 3-year-old is no hitting or no kicking or no violence or no aggression, whatever. And just explain it to them, draw pictures and that. So then when they go to hit the baby or the 1-year-old, then you go to the board and you say, okay, there's a consequence. Now, a really good consequence for this, you can't always do it, but this is a good one where the punishment can fit the crime. So you let the 1-year-old play with the 3-year-old's favorite toy for maybe 10 or 15 minutes with you so that you can prevent the 3-year-old from getting involved. The 1-year-old will often want the 3-year-old to play with you, with them, but don't allow that. Say, no, we're just going to play for 10 minutes because you hit him or her. This is a tough one because the 1-year-old doesn't learn, but the 3-year-old does. So I'll tell you a cute little story. This was adorable, actually. So it was a client, and it was a 3-year-old and a 15-month-old little girl. So the 3-year-old little boy was just going about playing whatever, and the little 15-month-old girl wanted to get his attention, so she'd come over and hit him. So he'd hit her back and, of course, knock her to the floor because he's bigger, and the mom didn't know what to do about that. And I said, well, just what I said earlier, put on the behavior board, no hitting. So this is really cute. One day the mom was watching, and the 15-month-old hit him, and he took her hand and walked her over to the board and said, see, no hitting. So he didn't hit her back. You can't stop the 1-year-old from hitting, but you can teach the 3-year-old to sort of be the hero. You don't want the older kids to be leaders of the younger siblings. You want them to be the hero. So he was becoming her hero. Plus, the bonus, she's getting the attention she wanted. He's walking her over to the board, talking to her, becoming the hero. So it was cute.
Okay, the next question is Mel from Canada. 5-year-old often plays too rough with his almost 2-year-old sister. She loves it, but it often escalates until she gets hurt. How do I get them to play less rough?
Yeah, the problem with that is that they don't have that inner voice that says this could turn ugly. And the little one's just so excited that the older one's playing with them. So what I would do is I'd say to the older one, here's the thing, is your little sister, was it a little girl?
Yeah.
Okay. Your little sister is more fragile than you. She could get hurt, and it's great that you play with her, but you say what they can play. So you have some ground rules on what they're allowed to play. Something that's usually, well, I was going to say something that's safe, but anything can turn into a war zone with kids, but when they get all excited. Anyway, one of the things that's really fun to do with little kids, especially when you get older and little kids, is balloon tennis. So they just use the coffee table as the net, and they have to hit it back and forth, just stuff like that. She can usually join in with that. But yeah, you have to control what they're playing. If it's something that you know is going to get out of control and does on a regular basis, you could, and also if it's fine for the first few minutes and then it gets wild, say you can play that for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And so you just have to be watching this and saying what they can do and what they can't do. And if it gets that bad and the 5-year-old doesn't take control over what they're playing with, put it on the behavior board and say, if you don't, or if you go outside of these parameters, or don't use the word parameters with a 5-year-old, but you know what I mean. If you play something else other than these, there'll be a consequence. And don't make it a bad, consequences get a bad rap. They don't always have to be bad. It could just be that he has to read a book to her or something like that. So it's something that he wouldn't necessarily want to do, but she would love. So say, if you play a bit rough with her, or if I see you doing something that you know you're not allowed to do with her, you have to read a book to her. So something like that. Anyway, how's that sound?
Yeah. I mean, this reminded me of just my brother and I in general. I don't know if he ever played too rough with me,
No,
but I
never.
do remember just, you put up with a lot just because I wanted to play with him. Like the
Yeah.
Lego, how
Yeah.
we were playing a little war and
Well, I'll tell this story because it's such a cute one. They were 5 years apart, and he was a very gentle boy, so they never got rough. And she idolized him. But she turned 3, and I'll never forget this. We're at the dining room table, and she was used to, or we all were, that my son would say, "Oh, can you get me that? Can you get me that?" And she'd run and get whatever he wanted. She would just run because that was her big brother. She idolized him, right? So, but this one day she goes, he said, "Can you get me that?" And she stopped. She didn't say anything. And then she goes, "No." And I remember my son and I got eye contact and we were like shocked. That's the first time she'd ever said no to him. So things were shifting and changing. Anyway, so this one day they said, "Oh, can we set up all the Lego in the living room? We're going to set up like a war." And I said, "Sure," because they had to ask permissions because the living room would be taken over for probably about a week with all this Lego. So anyway, I was in the family room. They were in the living room. And I could hear their voices starting to raise, and they never had argued really. So I heard because she'd never talked back to him before. So I heard them starting to argue. And I yelled out from the family room, I said, "Do you want me to put down my cup of tea, turn off the TV, stand up, walk in there and take care of things?" And normally they would have said no. But I heard one little voice, "Yes, please." That was my daughter. So I went in there. Oh my God, it was so funny. I went in there and I looked at the war he'd set up. Well, he's 8, she's 3. And he's all defensive. You can see it, his chin's up and he's got his arms crossed and he knows what's coming, right? Well, I'm loving this. So I got this big smile on my face and she's loving it too. She's just standing there like this because they both know Mom knows how to take care of business. I'm going to make it fair. What he had done was he was clever. He's pretty sly about this. He had set up 2 different sides, her side and his side. They were going to have a war. I don't know what that would have been, but anyway, they were going to have a war. Well, he'd set her up. She had like at least twice as many men, more like 3 times as many men. But they were all those dorky ones with the long pants, the goofy hats, the yellow with the red and white striped top, all the goofy looking men. But they were way more. Her side was way bigger. He, on the other hand, had like the Darth Vader, the really cool looking guys, right? All in black with the big swords. So he had all the cool ones. So instantly my daughter, because I'm just sizing it up, I'm taking my time because I'm loving this. My daughter's loving it too. Not my son. So and I said to him, I said, "Sweetie," I said, "do you think this is fair?" And his chin goes up. He's all defensive. "I think, look, she's got way more men." I said, "You're right." And I'm dragging this out. "You're right. She's got way more men. Wow, that was very giving of you." So I said, "So you think that's completely fair? You'd be just as happy with her side as yours." And I said, "Fine, then switch." Well, did he not? He didn't see that coming. Oh, he said, "No, it's okay." And then he mixed it all up and it was fair after that. But the reason why they never really fought was they knew Mom was going to come in and sort things out every single time. So, but yeah, and I did, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And so did my daughter. She was happy.
And it goes both ways too. Like I got things and my brother didn't, so.
Yeah, no, it was, well, they knew Mom would come in and make things fair and reasonable because that is what leaders do. You always make sure things are fair and reasonable. You got your finger on the pulse. You know what's going on. You know your kids inside and out. And it didn't matter who had caused the trouble. They would have been my target. I would have gone for it. And I would have said something like, "Oh, great, you're going to do all her chores tomorrow," or "You're going to do all his chores tomorrow." So it never would have been something awful. They were very good at taking their medicine. If I said, "You're going to be doing chores tomorrow," because, his chores, she would have said, okay, and she would have done them, right?
Yeah. I think also something I just want to touch on is you really built him up and he was my hero. And you talk a lot about this. A lot of parents do try and make the older siblings the leader, but you don't.
Well, a leader is the leader. You're the ones that lead. I never wanted him to do that because that's my responsibility. But I did set him up to be the hero. So, and I always said, "Oh, she looks up to you so much." When she was a little baby, because he was 5 years older too. He understood this. So that makes it easier because there was such a big age gap. I didn't do that on purpose. I'd had a couple of surgeries in between and that. But it worked out really well because he started grade 1. Then I had all that time with her as a newborn. So, but I always set him up as the hero. I say, "Oh, she just looks up to you. You're going to be her hero." So he was really proud of that.
We'll go on to the next question. Christine from the United States. My 5-year-old gets very angry very quickly at her younger siblings. She curses, hits, and demonstrates tantrum-like behavior, and I'm not sure how to handle it. I try to ignore and provide positive attention to her siblings, but it's hard to ignore the hitting and cursing.
Ooh, I was going to say big mistake. That sounds a bit harsh, but big mistake. You do not, if the older one is hitting the younger ones, you do not reward the younger ones in front of the older one for that. You got to deal with the older one because you're building resentment. So they're hitting because they probably already resent the younger ones. They're probably easier, right? Am I right? That's my guess, is maybe the younger ones are easier. And she knows it. So she tends to lash out at them. Then the younger ones get all your love and attention on top of that, building resentment. Does that make sense? Here's what I'd do. I'd put on the behavior board for all of them, so you're not singling this older one out, even though everybody knows it's for the older one. I'd put down no hitting, kicking, etc. So there's, in other words, no aggression towards anybody else. And then there's a consequence. So when she does hit, then she has to do something nice for the younger ones, like share a favorite toy or read a book to them or something like that. So have her, if she's mean to them, her consequence is she does something nice for them. Check out the behavior board because there's a backup. A lot of people say to me, if they haven't seen the behavior board already, well, yeah, hard to get them to do that though. I say, right, that's why we have a backup consequence. So if they won't do the positive action, then you do 24-hour media blackout for them or whatever. So there's a negative deprivation to back up the first one. So the first consequence for each child is a positive action. If they won't do that, then you do the negative deprivation. They learn eventually. If they don't learn the first time, they'll learn the second time. That's for sure.
This might be a good time to touch on one-on-one time with kids.
Very good. Yeah, very good. I'm surprised I didn't think of that, but that's so true. I usually do. I usually mention that. Yeah. Okay, so whenever kids are fighting, parents tend to do the one-on-one time. I don't know why they fight. They seem to resent each other. I spend 30 minutes with each child. I'll take them out for whatever. The biggest mistake you can make is doing that. You're building resentment. What you do is you play with them, all of them. So if you have 3 kids, you play with all 3 at the exact same time. And you play to the weakest link, the youngest one. Play something they can do, and also don't make it something competitive. Like games like Monopoly are built for family wars. I mean, it's just a disaster. You're going to have skipping day, where all we can do all day is skip together. For the next hour, we're only allowed to skip. I used to do stuff like that with my kids all the time. Like if I didn't have time to play with them and I was rushing around, say, okay, so mom's only allowed to skip for the next hour. And they were just watching me like a hawk waiting. I don't know. You don't remember that. I did that more with your brother. I don't know why. I must have done it with you too, but I always had something up my sleeve. So you play, and what you're doing is you're teaching them how to play together, how to have fun together. So a lot of parents expect kids to get along just because they think they should. That's not always going to happen. So you've got to teach them how to play together by playing with them. And also, you always play like to the weakest link, but also play in their world. You never just go to the nail salon with a bunch of kids. You go to the park and roll down the hill with them. Take turns rolling down the hill. Take turns seeing how many somersaults everyone can do. I would have done one and then lost my lunch. I mean, make sure it's something that you're going to be the worst at too, because they can all bond by laughing at you. I think that's how you and your brother bonded so well.
Oh yeah,
was laughing at me. I was always willing to make a fool out of myself and act like an idiot. And I know you're going to agree with that for sure. So then they had that bond. It was like, oh, mom's doing now. So it's a good thing to do, but never do the one-on-one time if they're not getting along, especially. If they are getting along, then sure you can do anything when everything's going well. But I'm answering questions when things aren't going well. So yeah, avoid the one-on-one time. It builds resentment and it's going to get you in worse trouble.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the final question. So it's Rithi from Canada. My 4.5-year-old has frequent meltdowns even now. Sometimes that means crying for 30 minutes straight. She is also extremely jealous of her brother, who's 2.5, and gets angry if we give him any attention. For example, if he fell down and we're attending to him, or if we clap for him.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. It's very similar to everything else I've been saying. Try and set her up as the hero. And if he falls down, he gets extra attention. When does she get extra attention? Does she have to hit to get attention? Because that's probably what she's doing. Anyway, use the behavior board. It's completely free. It's in the link or on BratBusters.com. And you just put down no hitting, kicking, etc. In other words, no aggression towards anybody. And then when she does, then there's a consequence. So what could the consequence be? It's younger brother. She gets to play with his favorite toy, or she has to read a book to him because she's old enough to 4.5. She could probably read a picture book to him because she knows all the words anyway. So something like that. If she's mean to him, she has to do something nice for him. So make her the hero, okay? So don't just give attention to him when he's the victim. Give attention to her before she's the attacker. So make sure that you do mix that up and also play with them together so they learn how to play together.
So we have no more questions, but I think we might end on the idea of, do siblings need to be best friends?
They don't need to be best friends. I think it's just luck if they are. They have to have, that's like chemistry with everybody. You can be love someone, but still not have much in common. And it's usually the commonalities that bring people together. So yeah, you can't expect that. And they might be friends, but they might not. But what you do expect is they treat each other with respect. And you hope they have fun in the family situation. But that's often facilitated by you. Children, especially teenagers, tend to bond over laughing at parents. And I know that's what my kids did. And I was all for it. So that was when they seemed to laugh the most, is when Mom did something stupid.
It was the best. So I think we'll end there.
Okay, thanks so much for that. And I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're ready to dive deeper, check out BratBusters.com to learn more about the Behaviour Board, parenting courses, and private one-on-one coaching with Lisa. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional advice. Lisa is a parenting coach, mom, and grandmother. She is not a licensed psychologist or counselor. Her services do not replace the care of psychologists or other healthcare professionals. For a full disclaimer, please visit BratBusters.com/disclaimer.